All right, so this video is on coordinate geometry for that PFA. The first thing I did was just write some notes on the board. So over here, we're starting with linear equations, the standard form being ax plus by equals c. A, b, and c are just numbers. And then slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. This is the one you're most familiar with, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. Remember that a y-intercept is when a line goes through and crosses our y-axis right there. Okay, so the point would be something like 0, b. Cool? So the other thing I looked at is how to find a slope on a graph, because this might be something you forgot. So what I learned was rise over run, but I've also heard of vertical over horizontal. So what it means is that our change up and down and over our change left and right. So here's a graph. My purple line is going through it, and my rise, I went up 1, 2, and then I went to the right 1, 2, 3. So my slope is 2/3. Okay. Then I went over here, and I thought, well, I'm going down now, so I'm no longer rising, and that's a negative movement. Okay. Anything left or down is negative movement. So I went down 2, -2. And then to the right 4, +4, and my slope is -1/2. All right, so if you need a moment to write those notes, go ahead and give it a pause. But the next thing I wanted to talk about was parallel and perpendicular lines. This is something that the PFA does quite a bit. So parallel lines, that's when they have the same slope. So if I were to draw it on a graph, a line parallel to this would look like that. Okay. They're gonna still go down 2/4 every single time. A perpendicular line, and I'm gonna use this symbol a lot today. So it's just a little perpendicular symbol. And the slope is the reciprocal. Now that's a new word. The reciprocal is when we flip the fraction and we change the sign. So if our original slope was -2/3, the perpendicular slope is +3/2. Okay, so I flipped the fraction over and I changed the sign from negative to positive. Another example of this, because whole numbers are kind of weird. If my original slope, m1 equals 3, the perpendicular, m2, would equal -1/3. Okay, because this is technically 3/1. So just keep those facts in mind. And I'm going to go ahead and erase most of this. So go ahead and take any notes up to this point right now. Pause it. And I'm erasing it now. Okay. And just like the last videos, all I'm doing is just going through the diagnostic questions to help you understand what you're doing here. So the first question is right here. We're given this graph of a line, and the question is to write an equation for a line that is perpendicular to this line. So and then it passes through 0, -1. Okay, so if it passes through over 0, down -1, we're looking for a line that's perpendicular. So we're looking for this black line where it's perpendicular to the purple line. Okay. Well, the first thing we need to do is figure out how to write an equation for line M. Okay, so first we know that it's going to be y equals, we need our slope, and we need our y-intercept. So our slope here is, well, this goes up 1 and then over 2. So our slope is 1/2. And our y-intercept here is -1. So -1 equals y. Okay. Well, if we're looking for a line that's perpendicular, then we need y equals the opposite, then the reciprocal of this, so -2x. And then it goes to the point 0, -1. Well, isn't that this point? That's our y-intercept. So we don't have to do much work to figure out that it's just -2x minus 1, and that is our answer. Another way this would have worked is if we said y equals -2x plus b, and now we plug in 0, negative 1? Well, negative 1 is y, and then x is 0, and then negative 2 times 0 is 0, so we're just left with b equals negative 1, which is why that worked, because our b here is negative 1. Okay, so that wasn't too bad of a problem. Sometimes they are a little bit more challenging than that. Okay, so the next one, we're given this equation, 4x plus 1y equals 4, and we want to find the slope that's parallel. Find parallel slope. Well, if you notice, this is in standard form. We want to put it in slope-intercept form so that we can find the slope better. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and get y by itself. So I'm going to subtract a 4x from both sides, and I'm left with 1y, which is just y, equals negative 4x plus 4. I did reorder this because it's always good to have your variables first, followed by your constants, okay? Well, now I'm in slope-intercept form. My slope is negative 4. We want a parallel slope. Well, a parallel line is going to have the same slope. So, n equals negative 4. Cool. Now we want the perpendicular slope of y equals 5x plus 5. So if you think back to our definition of perpendicular slope, we're looking for the reciprocal of this. So m1 equals 5, that's our original. Our perpendicular, m2, is going to be 1 over 5, but it's going to be negative. So that right there is our perpendicular slope. And one more, finding a slope, we have a parallel slope. But this one's going to be a little trickier. We have 5x plus 2y equals 2. To find a parallel slope, we want to get y by itself, so we're going to subtract that 5x. We're left with 2y equals negative 5x plus 2. And then we still have a 2 here, so we want to divide by 2, which means we're dividing the whole thing by 2. And we're left with y equals negative 5 halves x. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So our parallel slope is negative 5 halves, because it's not going to change. Okay? So go ahead and write that down. I'm erasing it now. Okay, so the next question, we're writing an equation. So, of a line parallel. To 5x minus 10y equals 6, that passes through the point 2, negative 1. Okay? So the first thing we want to do again is write this in terms of y. So we have 5x minus 10y equals 6. We're going to subtract the 5x over, subtract the 5x. We're left with negative 10y equals negative 5x plus 6. And we have negative 10 attached to the y, so we need to divide that out, which means we divide it out of everything. And we are left with y equals, well, negative 5 divided by negative 10 is 1/2 x. And 6 over 10, we can simplify that down to, divided by 2, 3 over 5. And then it's negative because you have a positive divided by a negative. Okay. Now, if we're trying to find an equation parallel to that, then we are looking for, then we're looking for the the same slope, but probably a different y-intercept. So we're given this point, and I'm just gonna do that over here. Y equals 1/2 x plus b. We wanna find b, so we're gonna plug in the points 2, -1, keeping in mind that when we're graphing, our ordered pair always has x first and then y. So we're just gonna plug those in. So I have -1 for y equals 1/2 times 2 for x plus b. -1 equals 1 plus b. Then we have to subtract 1 and b equals -2. So our line is y equals 1/2 x minus 2. Okay? That is how you find a line parallel to. Go ahead and write that down. I'm going to start just erasing a few things. Okay, so this time we're writing a line that's perpendicular to 2x minus 3y equals 6. Okay, and passes through the point 5, -1. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do again is solve for y. So we have 2x minus 3y equals 6. We already know to subtract that 2 to the other side, so we have -3y equals -2x plus 6. Divide everything by -3, and we have y equals -2 divided by -3 is positive, and then 6 divided by -3 is a -2. Okay, so now we want a line perpendicular to that. So we know that our slope is going to be the reciprocal, so 3/2, and it has to be negative. And we need to solve for b. Sorry, I forgot my x. Passing through the point 5, -1. So I'm plugging in 5 for x and -1 for y. Multiplying this through, I still have -1 equals -15/2 x, not x, plus b. We're gonna add 15/2 to both sides, and we get 13/2 equals b. Okay. Unfortunately, it's not that easy, because our equation of our line would be y equals -3/2 x plus 13/2. Now, if you're following along with your diagnostic, you'll know that this is not an answer on your answer sheet. So if you need this side, go ahead and write it down. I'm erasing it now. So right now we have the line y equals -3/2 x plus 13/2. Well, on your paper, everything's still written in standard form rather than slope-intercept form. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of the fractions by multiplying everything by 2. And so now I have 2y equals -3x plus 13. And then we want our x on the other side, keeping in mind that the x comes first and the y comes second. And we're left with 3x plus 2y equals 13. And if you look now, that should be an answer on your paper. Okay? Questions like this get tricky because there is a lot of steps, so just play it really carefully. Make sure you follow every single step. Okay, the next one, we're given a line that says y equals -2/3 x plus 5, and we want a perpendicular passing through So point 0, comma, negative 2. Okay. Well, we know a perpendicular slope needs to have a positive 3/2 x. And what's really nice is this is already our y-intercept, so -2. And that's all you have to do for that one. If you really wanted to, you could have plugged in -2 for y and 0 for x, but you would have found that b was going to still be -2. Okay, that is everything for linear equations, and now we're moving on to equations of a circle. Okay. So circles can be a little confusing, but they're honestly not too bad. So the equation looks a lot like vertex form of a quadratic. Okay. So this is an equation of a circle. I'm not going to write that. I'm just saving time. Where the center exists at h comma k. Keeping in mind that that's negative, it's a positive. That's negative, it's a positive. With a radius at r. Not r squared. So if this said 25, our radius is actually 5. Okay. So, our first question here is, what is the center? And the question is, we have x minus 5 squared plus y squared equals 4. Well, here we have y squared, but we don't have anything with it, so that just tells us that our k is 0. And our h is 5. So our center is at 5, 0. Okay. Let's see here. If we wanted to find the radius of this circle, well, it's the square root of 4, so radius equals 2. All right. Moving on, this question's quite a bit harder. So we're given the equation x squared plus y squared minus 6x plus 14y plus 54 equals 0. Okay, this is an equation of a circle, but it is not written in standard form. This is standard form, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is reorder it. So my x's are next to each other and my y's are next to each other. So x squared plus, minus 6x plus y squared plus 14y. And then we have plus 54 equals 0. Okay, so going back to completing the square, we want to think about these terms together and these terms together, because we have a perfect square here and a perfect square here, and that's what we want to get here. So to do that, we take our b term and divide it by 2. So here we have x minus 3 squared plus y plus 7 squared, because 14 divided by 2 is 7. But when we multiply this out, and we haven't done anything with the 54 yet, when we multiply this out, we end up with x squared minus 6x plus 9. You don't have to do so much math to figure this out. 3 squared is 9. We already have x squared minus 6x. Okay. Over here, we get y squared plus 14x. Again, we already have that. Oh, sorry, 14y. And then 7 squared is 49 plus 49. Okay. Trying to think back to the original equation, we're going to just move the 9 and 49 together. So we're left with x squared minus 6x plus y squared plus 14y plus 49 plus 9, which is 58. Okay, listen to this really closely, because now we have this equation and this equation. And if you look closely, they're not exactly equal. So this one has 58 and this one adds 54. So we have to think about what did we have to do to this equation to get to this equation, okay? And what it is we had to add 4. Well, if we add 4 to this side, that means we're adding 4 to that side, okay? So, our final answer here is that our equation is x minus 3 squared plus y plus 7 squared equals 4. Because up here, we just made these two equations equal, and then we're left with 4 on the other side. That is how you get to the standard form of a circle, okay? Center here would be at 3, negative 7, with a radius of 2. Okay, and the next one, we want to think about writing an equation that has a center of negative 3, 2, and a radius is 5. Oops. So we don't really have to do a whole lot to figure this out. We go back to our standard form equation, which I hope you wrote down because I erased it. And it says x minus h, which is negative 3, plus y minus k, which is 2, equals your radius squared. Okay, to simplify this down, x minus a negative is x plus 5, or 3. And then y minus 2 squared stays the same. And then 5 squared equals 25. All right, and I think, oh no, let's see here. Yeah, okay, we have 2 more. So that's all for that one. The next question asks, what is the center and radius of this equation? Okay, well, our center is at negative 9, negative 6. Remember, we're doing the opposite sign because it's inside parentheses. And the radius is at 3 because 3 squared is 9. Cool. Now I just have one more question that's just a little bit trickier. And we're just going to fix up this. Okay. So this time we have a plus 14x plus 12y plus 4. Okay, again, we want to reorder it. X squared plus 14x plus y squared plus 12y plus 4 equals 0. Thinking about pulling these together, I would get x plus 7 squared. And here I would get y plus 6 squared. Well, that means we are adding 49 and we're adding 36 because 7 squared is 49, 6 squared is 36. So our equation would be x squared plus 14x plus y squared plus 12y plus 49 plus 36, which is 85. Well, again, this does not equal that, right? We have a plus 85 and only plus 4 here. So how do we get to 85? Well, we would have to add 81 here. Okay? So that means our equation here is going to be x plus 7 squared plus y plus 6 squared equals 81, where the center is at negative 7, negative 6, and the radius is 9. Okay, that should be about everything you need for coordinate geometry. I know this is kind of a long video, but keep in mind that this is something we would have learned over like 3 or 4 classes. So hopefully you took your time and watched that and are going to do well on the PFA.